Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fight Forever podcast, a new podcast about all things professional wrestling. We'll primarily be focusing on AEW, a bit about New Japan Pro Wrestling, and we'll talk a bit about WWE, Impact, and Ring of Honor as well sometimes. We post these episodes several times a week, so let me give you the lowdown. My name is Michael Gaffney, or just Gaff, and I'm the host. I have a lot of thoughts about wrestling, and whether your level is intermediate, a newbie, or you consider yourself an uneducated mark, this podcast is for you. And just so you know, this podcast is recorded in one take, or as close to one take that you can get, minus some tiny edits to preserve the authenticity of what I'm saying, and so it feels like a conversation, because I hate when podcasts are heavily edited. So, if you are a wrestling newbie, you'll learn, and if not, then you'll want to contribute. Head over to twitter.com/fightforeverpod and tweet us. We'll respond to your tweets on the show. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to it. So on yesterday's show, we talked about AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling's pay-per-view last Sunday, which was Forbidden Door, and I mentioned that we're going to talk about WWE Raw. Now, I don't watch much Raw or anything like that in terms of WWE content. I feel like the WWE product is just not suited for me as much as it was once upon a time, but I do keep up to date, so I saw that John Cena returned on Monday Night Raw, and the whole show was about him, which is good because it's his 20-year anniversary. He did not say he'd be at SummerSlam, and he didn't challenge Theory to a match or anything like that, which goes against all the reports that we've seen so far. In fact, he actually said that he doesn't know when he'll be wrestling again, which was very interesting because for sure he will wrestle Theory, but we don't know when that will be, and if we have to guess, it's still going to be SummerSlam. But they didn't do any angle at the end of the show, and while the show as a whole was very wholesome, it did leave a lot to be desired. Anyway, let's talk AEW and let's talk Dynamite last night. AEW, live from Detroit, Michigan for the first time, debuted, that's the wrong word. They showcased Blood and Guts, which was a very good show, even by AEW's very high standards. So I'm not going to go through the entire show bit by bit in terms of in order. I will try and highlight all the main parts for you. So we're going to start with Christian Cage has incredible heat. Luchasaurus is now a heel. There is definitely a program with Jungle Boy coming up, and they're building up Luchasaurus for the majority of July, I'd imagine, before they start their program for the next pay-per-view. That would be my guess. Christian Cage said that he was told to come out and apologize for the remarks he made last week regarding Jungle Boy's father. And instead of apologizing for the remarks he made, he doubled down, saying that he's sorry that his whole family isn't dead, which, my goodness, got him some very, nearly nuclear heat. The Acclaimed and the Gun Club, as over as they are, they're readying a rift in the faction, which I don't really know why they're doing this. They're super over. The Acclaimed specifically are very over right now. And I think that's just to do with the fact that people are really enjoying the comedy of the Acclaimed and their raps and the seriousness of the Acclaimed with the ridiculousness of the Gun Club and the Ass Boys. So people were very into this and very into them when they came out. They got a huge pop when the Acclaimed's music hit. And Max Caster's rap, as usual, was always going to be well received. So lately they've been on fire, and they haven't in any way teased before now that the Acclaimed and the Gun Club were going to split up or anything like that. The only thing that they've shown really is that Billy Gunn has a bit of favoritism for the Acclaimed as opposed to his own two sons. I didn't think that was going to lead to any split up or anything like that. I feel like they're only getting started, but I feel like they're planting the seeds now for the Acclaim to fully turn face and the Ass Boys to fully stay heel. So at the end of this match, Anthony Bowens gets out of his wheelchair and he jumps into the ring with his crutch in hand, and he goes to hit Danhausen, who gets out of the way, and he strikes was it Austin Gunn, I think? He strikes Austin Gunn, and Danhausen picks up the win. After the match, they're fighting with Anthony Bowens, and Billy Gunn steps in between and shoves, I believe, Colton to the ground. And people were very surprised by that. And then the Gun Club, Austin and Colton, walked out and left the Acclaimed in the ring. This would be interesting to see where this goes. I hope they don't split them up so soon. They are so good. They are so fun to see on TV. I don't think I've laughed, like properly belly laughed, at an act like this in a very long time, because they're not stupid for stupid's sake. They're just funny. Like, they're not ridiculous characters. They're just funny personalities. So I think splitting them up would be really stupid. They've only gotten over because of the comedy between the whole group. So it's okay that they tease this riff for a while if they want, but they shouldn't pull the trigger. I think that this is a good opportunity for some character building. Have them do some comedic segments. Let them have longer matches. Hell, even make them go to relationship counseling. There's still a lot of potential here. So I hope that they don't end the relationship between the Acclaimed and the Gun Club anytime soon. Moving on to Jade Cargill. Jade Cargill killed Layla Gray, and Jade Cargill told Stokely to get somebody worth her time and that Athena and Chris Statlander aren't good enough. They come out to attack her. Layla Gray pushes Athena off the top rope, and Layla Gray might be joining the baddies. She extends her hand to Stokely. Cargill pushes it away and gets in her face, and Layla Gray smiles. Good segment. It made Layla Gray seem like somebody who might actually be relevant. Jade Cargill, as usual, is saying, cut the shit, I want somebody good. So I don't know who's going to beat Jade Cargill, but they need to build somebody up as a monster, but not have them clash heads yet. So far, with the AEW women's roster, you have literally Jade Cargill. She's the only one that looks like she's a monster. So I don't know what they're going to do to have her be beaten. I think Chris Statlander could do a great job, personally, and elevate that title. Alternatively, though, you could have Jade Cargill beat Thunder Rosa and go on a dominant reign with the women's title, but have somebody call her out for not defending the TBS title, or something along those lines, and then she loses the TBS title. I don't know. Or you could have her defend both titles at once in open challenges or something. Who knows? The sky's the limit for Jade Cargill. She's a star. I just think that they need to build somebody else up to challenge her, because at this moment in time, there is not one person on that roster that looks like they can beat her. And I hope they don't have Thunder Rosa and Jade Cargill butt heads, because Thunder Rosa technically should just be killed in that match. Moving on to Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh. Jay Lethal calls out Samoa Joe, and now there is going to be a match set at Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor at the end of July on pay-per-view, which finally brings this feud to an end on AEW television, I would imagine. We're still going to have about 3 weeks or so of this feud on TV, but the sooner that they get these guys to Ring of Honor, the better, because AEW, as we know, has a stacked roster. This is the thing that they are criticized the most for, which is stockpiling talent and stockpiling ex-WWE talent. It will be very good for them to finally give Ring of Honor a roster, Claudio Castagnoli was supposed to be on the Ring of Honor roster, but he is on the AEW roster now. So they need somebody like Samoa Joe, Jay Lethal, and another big name from Ring of Honor to get people to tune into Ring of Honor. I'm hoping that this clears up TV so we can have more, not concise, but more entertaining storylines, I suppose. And now, finally, Blood and Guts. And wow, this was carnage. They absolutely fucking killed each other. It was a great match with a lot of blood, violence, injuries, and spots. So let me explain what Blood and Guts is for the unaware. There are two wrestling rings side by side. They're joined together, and both rings are completely enclosed by a huge steel cage, kind of like a Hell in a Cell. If you're into wrestling, you know what a Hell in a Cell is. There's a door at either end of the cage. Every 4 minutes, a member from each team enters the match on a rotational basis. So every 4 minutes, one person enters the cage. The match itself does not start until every competitor is in the cage. There are 12 competitors in total, 2 teams of 6. Team 1 is Eddie Kingston, Santana, and Ortiz, and the Blackpool Combat Club, which consists of Jon Moxley, Wheeler Yuta, and Claudio Castagnoli. Team 2 is the Jericho Appreciation Society, which has Chris Jericho, Jake Hager, Matt Menard, Sammy Guevara, Daniel Garcia, and I forget his name, Angelo Dawkins, is that his name? The match starts off with Claudio and Sammy Guevara. Sammy starts being destroyed by Claudio. Sammy gets away from Claudio by jumping from rope to rope and corner to corner, and he jumps into the second ring. It's super athletic and gives the middle finger to Claudio, and man, the heat Sammy has. What an addition he is to this faction. So, because of the match last Sunday at Forbidden Door, the Jericho Appreciation Society, up until the point where everybody is into the match, has the one-man advantage every time. So, for example, we have a one-on-one match between Claudio and Sammy Guevara. The next person who enters the cage is going to be from the Jericho Appreciation Society. So, this match was incredibly violent. Just to skip forward just a little bit, up until the point where it's 3-on-3, the match is quite slow and there isn't any blood or anything like that. No one's bleeding yet until Jon Moxley enters the ring. So it is 3-on-2 currently. I believe off the top of my head it's Daniel Garcia, Sammy Guevara, and Jake Hager versus Wheeler Yuta and Claudio, I believe. And Jon Moxley enters the ring. So this is the Blackpool Combat Club are all currently in the ring. And what happens here is incredibly interesting to me. So there's a term in wrestling. There's 2 terms. One of them is called blading and one of them is called gigging. They mean the same thing, but just so you know, I am just going to refer to it as blading. Jon Moxley gets in this match, and Jon Moxley is a hardcore wrestler. He's a very good wrestler. He's a very aggressive wrestler, but he loves bleeding. Last Sunday at Forbidden Door, he bled a lot. It looked like he messed up a blade job really badly. In this match, Jon Moxley specifically was gigging or blading everybody else. I did not see one person actually cut their own head open. I saw Jon Moxley doing it for them. Specifically at 1 point, 2 points, Daniel Garcia gets stuck in the head with a fork. I believe it was a fork. And Jon Moxley cut him open seconds later. He was lying on the mat and cut him open seconds later. Later on in the match, it would have been Angelo Dawkins, I believe, who Jon Moxley picks up some skewers and jams them into his head. Jon Moxley lies down on the canvas beside him, and you see on television the little slit that Jon Moxley makes on his head. This is on TV. You see it happen. It is super sly. Most people would not have noticed it, but you see it 1,000,000% happen. So Jon Moxley is blading everybody in this match, and I tweeted this on the Fight Forever Pod Twitter account today, where I said that if there's a match that you're going to be in where you don't want to blade yourself, maybe because of fear or because you don't have enough experience or you don't like bleeding, whatever it may be, the best person to do it for you is probably Jon Moxley. He has enough experience doing it. He is very safe at doing it. He cut about 4 people in this match. So he was clearly the person who was leading the charge for the bleeding in this match, which was in fairness to Jon Moxley and in fairness to the way that this was written and scripted, it made the most sense for him to do it. I don't know if he was against doing it or if he wanted to do it or anything like that, but it made the most sense to have him do it. Moving a little bit on, everybody is killing each other. Chris Jericho enters last. Eddie Kingston enters last. They're going for each other. Chris Jericho is hitting people with a bat. Eddie Kingston's beating people up with a kendo stick. Eventually, what happens is Ty Conti on the outside shoves the referee into the cage, grabs the keys, and opens the cage. Now, as you know, in a Hell in a Cell match, in a steel cage match, whatever, you gotta go on top once the door is open. Duh. So they do this spot where Ruby Soho, or as Taz like to call her, Ruby Riott, runs out and takes Ty Conti out of the equation. But the door is now open. So now you have people climbing on top of the cage. So you have Sammy Guevara and you have Eddie Kingston up there. You have Chris Jericho up there. You have Claudio up there. There's a lot of people on top of this cage. Eventually it goes to a spot where Eddie Kingston throws off Sammy Guevara off the top of the cage. And Sammy essentially landed in what was a crash pad. It was 2 tables stacked together with some padding underneath it, with a cloth over it. I'm perfectly fine with safe landings for wrestlers. I'm completely fine with the fact that you knew it was a gimmick table. I don't care. It was a 6 spot because the way that Sammy fell was he fell straight. So I don't really know how to explain this, but he was thrown off by Eddie Kingston and his body did not bend at all. He did this perfect rotation where he was completely flat. And also, you can see Eddie Kingston counting down to Sammy Guevara before doing it. And Sammy absolutely nailed this. He looked great by doing this. So, moving forward a bit, you then have Chris Jericho and you have Eddie Kingston up top fighting. And man, their boots are covered in thumbtacks. Completely. To the point where at one point Chris Jericho completely loses his footing and is about to fall over. So for every move that they did, they are so low to the ground because they are fully expecting to slip and fall over. And as JR said on commentary, it's like in an ice rink up there. So they are fighting up there, they're fighting up there. Eventually, Eddie Kingston gets the better of Chris Jericho. And Matt Menard is up there as well, and he breaks up a submission hold that Eddie Kingston has on Chris Jericho. And then Claudio goes up and starts taking out Matt Menard. So now you have Matt Menard put in a sharpshooter by Claudio, and you have Eddie Kingston. He has like this chokehold, I forget what it's called, on Chris Jericho. And Eddie Kingston, he looked great in this match in general, but he is putting so much into this hold. and he's screaming at Jericho to tap, and he's screaming at Jericho to tap, and all of a sudden Matt Menard taps out to Claudio, and all you see is Eddie Kingston absolutely raging at Claudio. He is so angry. He's there, he's sitting on the ground, he's waving his hands because he thought he was going to get Jericho to submit, and Claudio goes over to Eddie Kingston and gives him a fist bump and is like, hey man, we won. And interestingly with this, which was very unlike Dynamite, especially in the recent weeks and months, they gave them several minutes of post-match celebration on the show. And that's due to the match ending probably sooner than they expected, but it was great to see the post-match celebrations, particularly between Eddie Kingston and Cesaro, who at one point Eddie Kingston like fist bumps Cesaro and he's talking to him and they're smiling to each other. So I don't know if that was supposed to be on TV or what they're doing with that, but there were fist bumps and there were slaps on the arms and there was a lot of congratulations happening over there. And they left the door open for a Claudio Castagnoli and Eddie Kingston match in future, because the story is there. They have a history with each other, and on top of that, you're after adding another layer to it by having Claudio outshine Eddie Kingston in a match that Eddie Kingston wanted. So overall, this was a great show. Hilariously, at one point during the show, they're not on commercial break. I watched this on Fight.tv. They're not on commercial break. Chris Jericho doesn't want to do any spots on top of the cage at all while they're on commercial break. So you see Chris Jericho at one point shouting down to somebody going, hey, are we on break? And the answer was, no, we're live. And Chris Jericho just goes, shit. So then Chris Jericho realizes they have to do something, so that's when they start doing spots on top of the cage, which was hilarious as well. So overall, very good show, very enjoyable show. The one thing I will say about Dynamite, and I hope that after next week they fix this thing that they're doing. Next week is Wardlow versus Scorpio Sky in a street fight. Scorpio Sky specifically had the stipulation that it has to be a street fight. I'm perfectly okay with that. We all know that All Ego Ethan Page is definitely going to interfere on behalf of Scorpio Sky and everything. That's fine. Like we expect it. Interestingly, it's in a street fight. AEW, for the last 2 months specifically, are doing so many gimmick matches. It is incredible. 3 months actually. So many gimmick matches. It's incredible because they're trying to get their ratings up. My criticism of this is, how can you expect to get your ratings up when you're not actually giving people a reason to tune in? And I will clarify what I mean by that. If for 3 weeks in a month, the main event is just a wrestling match and it's a very popular match, let's just say it's going to be Darby Allin versus Jon Moxley, just for example, in the main event of Dynamite, and Jon Moxley's defending his title. That's it. That's all that they're doing. If they do that for 3 weeks, and then on the 4th week, it is Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin in a street fight, you're going to have more people tune into that street fight than if you were to do that on week 1. Because you're after building up that Darby Allin can't beat Jon Moxley in a regular match. So now you're thinking, okay, if there's a street fight, he might win. But if you're having that from the get-go, you know Darby Allin is probably going to lose. By having the gimmick matches, it makes it so I will tune in regardless. But it makes it so the average person is just thinking, oh, there's another gimmick match. There's another ladder match. There's another tables match. There's another street fight. There's another this. There's another that. And you just think to yourself, okay, there's so many of these gimmick matches going on, that I'm not actually missing anything because there's so many of them. But if there was a few less, then when they happen, it makes them more special. Sometimes less is more. This is one of those circumstances. Speaking of gimmick matches, on Friday is the Royal Rampage, which is boat rings, which were used last night because Rampage is recorded right after Dynamite, is essentially a Royal Rumble between two rings. And the winner gets a number one contender title shot, whatever, against Jon Moxley, which is cool. I like it. I like the idea of doing like a Royal Rumble Battle Royal style thing every so often, but they've only done one a few weeks ago. They did one a couple of weeks ago where Kyle O'Reilly won. They don't need to do it again. Whatever. We know who won. I'm not going to spoil it for you because that's going to be a show on Saturday where we review Rampage. But in general, it's a cool winner. I will say that. Now give me 2 seconds while I get... Do I have any more notes? I don't. So it would be very interesting to see what happens with whoever won Rampage, Royal Rampage, in terms of the title shot, because I can tell you one thing for sure. It's not one of the 5 people who are technically the number one contenders, which I am going to do another show about this. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or the day after or Friday. I might even do it on Saturday because Rampage is primarily going to be that Royal Rampage match. I might do it on Saturday's show. It makes zero sense that the AEW rankings do not dictate who the next number one contender is, because they don't. And I will go through it in detail on Saturday's show. So that is Blood and Guts done. That is Raw slightly recapped. There is going to be another AEW pay-per-view that's going to be coming up in the next, I would imagine, August time. Unless they're just going to wait until September, which they might, because Ring of Honor has a pay-per-view at the end of July. So there's a chance they're going to wait until All Out at the end of September for the next pay-per-view. If they do that, this Jungle Boy Luchasaurus storyline is going to be going on for so long. I have a theory. Excuse me. I have a theory that Jade Cargill might potentially win the women's championship at All Out, because I think it is her time. I think that Tony and I think AEW are going to cash in on Jade Cargill because she has a lot of hype around her, and not only does she have a lot of hype around her, I think she is great on the mic. I think that she has a lot of potential. I think she can go to the very, very, very top. And she is improving in the ring. As much as people give her shit for her wrestling, she's after improving a lot. So I think that this might be her time. And with Thunder Rosa being injured, I will presume that they're going to have her lose the title in the next couple of months. I'm surprised that they didn't have her lose it at Forbidden Door, to be honest, because she's hurt. She's very hurt. And she needs time off to heal. She's working with a bad leg, I believe. So Jade Cargill more than likely is going to win that title at the next pay-per-view. The only reason why I have that theory is because she's completely ran out of people for the TBS title. And they've brought this up on TV as well. Like she's beaten absolutely everybody she can beat for that title, which means that she has to move up to the AEW Women's Championship. So it only makes the most sense. Jay Lethal and Samoa Joe for Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor is going to be a great match, and it's finally going to be the end of that feud, I hope. So in terms of that match, that will be reviewed, and that pay-per-view will be reviewed on this podcast after it airs at the end of July. And that's it for today's show. I will go into more detail about AEW's rankings on Saturday. We will also talk a little bit more about Luchasaurus. I have a couple of things that I want to talk about with him, and I hope that that storyline does go well. So thank you very much, everybody. Remember to tweet us over at twitter.com/fightforeverpod, and I will be sure to respond to you there or respond to you on the show, whichever. But there will be another episode of the podcast on Saturday, which is going to be the Rampage review. I was going to do a preview tomorrow, but the more I'm thinking about it, there isn't actually enough to preview. So you're going to be looking at Saturday for the Rampage review, and we're also going to talk about the AEW power rankings, because I think that is a ridiculous thing that I feel like they put way too much emphasis on for something that doesn't actually mean anything. So thank you so much, everybody. I will talk to you all later. Take care, and tweet us over at twitter.com/fightforeverpod.